In this section, we're going to discuss trend lines, long-term, outer, and inner trend lines inside of an uptrend. We're also going to show you how you can automate the process. Let's get started. So in front of you is the Great British Pound trading against the Japanese yen on a 4-hour time frame. And as you can see, the market's in an uptrend. Let me walk you through the steps of how to appropriately apply your long-term, outer, and inner trend line after the trend has already begun. So what you're going to do is mark the lowest point of the trend as well as mark the highest point of the trend. Now it's very important that you do this, especially if you're brand new, because it's going to make applying your hand-drawn trend lines that much easier. Then what we're going to do is back up the market to only show the highest point of the trend and try your very best to zoom in to where only the lowest point of the trend is shown. Now we need to connect the lows of support or the lows of the candlesticks together without breaking through the candlesticks. So let me walk you through that process. I'm going to left click over the lowest point of the trend and hold. And I'm going to bring my mouse from the left side of the screen to the right side of the screen, and I'm going to connect the candlesticks together. Once the candlesticks touch the trend line, I'm going to release. Be sure not to penetrate or break through your hand-drawn trend lines. It is not okay if you draw through the candlesticks. Once the market touches your hand-drawn trend line, then you're going to release. This is a long-term trend. If the market slows down, you will expect the market to find some sort of support or bounce at this hand-drawn trend line in a later date. Now, notice how this market began to make higher highs and higher lows faster from the last touch. Left click and hold from the last time the market touched your hand-drawn trend line and then continue the process up. You're going to notice the market began to make higher highs and higher lows at a different market speed. And continue this process until you're at the highest point of the market. Now you're going to notice that you have a long-term, an outer, and an inner hand-drawn trend line. If this market touches your inner trend line, typically a buying opportunity will present itself. If this market by chance breaks the inner trend line, you will expect the market to move towards your outer trend line. Notice how this market broke your inner trend line and gravitated towards the outer trend line and had a bullish bounce. That could have been a buying opportunity. If your outer trend line is broken, typically what that means is the market is slowing down and is moving towards the long-term trend line. If the distance between where the live market is and your long-term trend line is great enough, typically investors will begin to sell the market or short the market from where we are now towards a long-term opportunity. Or they will wait till the market touches the long-term trend line, in which they will then look to buy. Let's walk you through the same process, but automating your hand-drawn trend lines. In front of you is the Great British Pound trading against the New Zealand dollar on a 4-hour time frame. And as you can see, the market is making higher highs and higher lows and is inside of an uptrend. In this section, you're going to learn how to apply your hand-drawn trend lines automatically to identify your long-term, outer, as well as your inner trend lines within just a few seconds. If you can do this right, you can identify trading opportunities relatively fast. So for this example, you can see that the market is touching your inner trend line, which basically means one of two things should take place. Either the market should hold at support and provide a buying opportunity towards the north, or the market should break your inner trend line and begin to fall towards your outer trend line, which should provide a selling opportunity. Let's walk through the steps of applying your long-term, outer, and inner trend lines automatically a little bit slower. The very first thing I want to do is identify the lowest point of the trend. I can zoom in on the lowest point of the trend so I can visually see the low of 2 candlesticks to the left and 2 candlesticks to the right, which are higher than center wick low. The next thing that I want to do is apply my hand-drawn trend line, but I want to automate it. So I'm going to bring my mouse all the way towards the top to where I can see my smart tools. I'm going to left click over the drop down and left click over smart trend line. Once I do this, you will notice that my candlesticks can now be highlighted. It's very important that I bring my mouse, which is my cursor, below the lowest point of the trend and then left click one time. Once I left click one time, you will notice that my long-term trend line is now applied. The next step is applying your outer trend line. I'm going to left click over my smart trend line and highlight the icon and left click over where the market last touched my uptrend line. Now I have my outer trend line applied. I can repeat the steps one more time to bring in my inner trend line. Left click over the smart trend line, left click below the last touched, and as you can see, I have my inner, my outer, and my long-term trend line applied. Now let's talk about downtrend lines.